kick off our morning with Cowboy Ethics. Yahoo!
Outstanding. Do you think our president is adjusting to the West very well? When I walked in, I almost broke out in that famous song about the Rhinestone Cowboy riding out on the street in a star-spangled rodeo. Isn't that rhinestones around there? And guess where she bought it? She didn't buy it in a local store. She bought it in Santa Fe. Now, that's a rhinestone city. Rhinestone City. Not only did she buy it in Santa Fe, she probably paid way too much for it because she bought it in Santa Fe. But President, you're adjusting. You're adjusting the boots we could talk about in the next session. They look like they come from Chihuahua City. But they ride horses down there as well, so that's fine. I want to give you a little history of why we're in the business of ethics in the College of Business. And then we're going to have a bit of a chat along the way. Three of the things I want to talk about will require us to maybe talk among ourselves. But let me give you just a bit of history. New Mexico State University, along with University of New Mexico, are two of 8 universities that are in the Daniels Foundation Consortium for Ethics and Ethics Education. And I should tell you a little bit about Bill Daniels. Bill Daniels grew up in Hobbs, New Mexico, along with his brother Jack Daniels. Jack Daniels, and that's his name. I know the AD's been drinking a lot of that Jack Daniels, and he thinks he found a new source now for cheap whiskey. But Jack Daniels happens to be the father of Diane Denish, and so there's a relationship. But Bill Daniels grew up in New Mexico, went to New Mexico Military Institute, and ended up in Denver, Colorado, where he actually became kind of the father of the cable television industry. And so he became a billionaire, and cable TV went into oil and gas and that sort of thing. Bill Daniels was kind of a maverick guy. He was a jet pilot. I think he was a jet pilot in the war, and then I think his Learjet's still on display up in Denver, but he flew his own jet plane. Kind of a maverick. I don't know, he had 3 or 4 wives, and by the way, the person who is the CEO of the Daniels Foundation says every one of them still thinks they know how to run the foundation better than she does. So you want to watch that, Mr. Vice President, how many people want to run your foundation. But Bill Daniels had a side that many people saw that he wanted to be part of his legacy, and that was all about ethics. And I'll tell you 2 stories that were told us. In one occasion, when he was a young man, he sold insurance. And he sold apparently workers' compensation insurance, perhaps among other products. And he was selling these insurance products, and he found out after having sold to a company that a worker had been killed working in a company. And he found out that the underwriter of that insurance policy had gone broke. He had not been notified of that. And as a consequence, here's a claim for a death in workers' compensation. And the underwriter is bankrupt. Bill Daniels personally paid the claim. Personally paid the claim for that particular individual. A second story told about Bill Daniels is that he loved sports as well, and he owned the Utah Jazz. If you're basketball fans, you know there was the American Basketball League and the National Basketball League. And he owned the Utah Jazz, and in the early years of the Utah Jazz and in the ABA, things didn't go real well, and some of the companies went broke. And one of them was the Utah Jazz, which he owned. And they went broke in mid-season. Bill Daniels went back and worked at his other trades, whether it was oil and gas or whether cable TV, made enough money to go back to Utah. He paid all the vendors an estimated amount that they had lost as a result of the season being terminated. He paid the players, and he paid the fans back. Those who had season tickets, he paid the fans back. He was a big believer in ethics and ethics in business. So as a consequence, when he gave $1.6 billion to his foundation, and it's a nice foundation, when he did that, he said one of the things that he wanted out of that is he wanted to teach people ethics. He only would allow his foundation to give money to colleges of business. I don't know why that fascination with colleges of business, but his first donation was $20 million to the University of Denver. And if you know the University of Denver, it's a very prestigious university, high-class college of business, one of the best. He gave them $20 million, and I'll tell you a story about why he didn't do that anymore. And then he started a program at the University of Wyoming. What I'm going to be talking about today actually comes out of the University of Wyoming. They gave $20 million to the University of Denver, and when he did that, he found out that 2 and 3 and 4 years later, they didn't always honor what he thought they were supposed to be doing. So when he set up the consortium, his foundation said, we will give you $1.25 million, which is what our grant is. But we'll give you $250,000 a year, and you have to perform on the things you said you would do. And as long as you're performing, you'll get your $250,000. We think at the end of 5 years, it'll be rolled over for another 5 years. But they want to be satisfied that the money they spent is going to work. So we're part of an 8-university consortium. University of New Mexico is one. There are 4 in Colorado. University of Colorado at Colorado Springs, University of Denver, Colorado State University, and Northern Colorado University. University of Wyoming, where they have spent a lot of money in ethics and ethics education, and the University of Utah. So there's not much of a similarity. They're all different kinds of schools. There are 2 or 3 land grants in there, I think, and then state schools. And actually, University of Colorado, Colorado Springs is sort of a branch, I guess, of the University of Colorado. So all good schools, and of all the groups I deal with and have more fun with, it's the 7 deans of those schools as we deal on ethics issues. We each, when we made our proposals, were expected to carve out a niche. You know, they didn't want 8 programs exactly alike. So our niche happens to be a couple of things. Comparative ethics, that is to say, are ethics in the United States different than ethics in Mexico? Ricardo, are they? They are. What is legitimate and ethical in Mexico, in some cases, would not be acceptable here, and vice versa. There are countries where it is an expectation to give a bribe to do business. It's very ethical to do that. Here, it's not considered ethical to do that. But more interestingly, we're looking at comparative ethics between our citizens in New Mexico are non-natives and Native Americans. And is there a difference in the ethics of Native Americans than the ethics that we pretty much promote for the entire state of Mexico? And the answer is yes. What they honor and what they believe to be ethical is somewhat different. So we have studies underway in that. Then the other little niche that we carved out, probably because of my background, was the niche of the interface between public official ethics and private sector ethics. That is to say, in nearly every case where there was a public official who was unethical, they probably had a private sector person who aided and abetted that. We have Senator Manny Aragon in sabbatical in Colorado right now as a result of that interface between the private sector and the public sector. We've had 2 state treasurers in prison as a result of that interface between the private sector and the public sector. So we're looking at that particular thing, and I'm pleased to say, with Lowell here, we have a very aggressive program with the Cooperative Extension Service in trying to teach ethics to all publics. They had a program called County College, and they were educating county officials, both elected officials and employees, on all aspects of management and so on. And so we added ethics to their curriculum, but not only did we add ethics to the curriculum, we then went on to go to the Municipal League and to the New Mexico legislature and add them as customers. And as a consequence, working with the Cooperative Extension Service and with Arts and Science over in your department, we put together a certificate program in ethics for public officials. It's good for elected officials, and it's also very good for people who just work as civil servants. So we're very pleased with that program, and it's underway, and that's one of the things that we were obligated to do as a result of a $1.25 million grant. But the other thing we were obligated to do is to talk to you deep breathers about ethics. It was an expectation of the Daniels Foundation that you could use a tune-up. Or maybe you just forgot maybe whether that was ethical or not. So today we're tuning up a little bit. I will say that we do have 17 Daniels Fellows working right now, all but one of them on this campus. They're from Arts and Science, Engineering, College of Business, I know for sure. A person from New Mexico